Tonight, we're going deep inside a sprawling criminal enterprise, one that's hidden in plain sight. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry built on deception, technology, and, at its core, immense human suffering. This is the story of Cambodia's cyber scam compounds and the desperate, high-stakes effort to shut them down.
Our story starts with what should have been a major breakthrough. A joint task force of South Korean officials descends on a notorious compound near Phnom Penh. They're expecting to find a massive, active criminal operation. But when they breach the walls, they find, well, nothing. The entire place has been scrubbed clean. The computers, the people, every shred of evidence, it's all just gone.
So how does a crime scene of that magnitude just vanish into thin air? To really get what's going on, we need to break this down. First, we'll look at that empty crime scene. Then, the fact that this was a well-known secret with warnings that were ignored for months. We'll expose the horrifying human cost, detail the official response that's finally underway, and then ask the biggest question of all, is this entire criminal industry simply too big to fail?
Right, so what exactly happened at that compound? Well, it turns out the South Korean team's inspection was preempted. Just before they were scheduled to arrive, local Cambodian police had already conducted their own sweep operation.
Now, you might think an empty building means the raid was a failure, but actually it was a chilling confirmation of just how sophisticated these criminal networks are. They are so agile, so well-informed, that they can pack up a massive operation and disappear at a moment's notice. This wasn't about one building. It was a sign that the entire network was alive, well, and always one step ahead.
And that agility leads us to a really difficult truth. This crisis wasn't a secret at all. In fact, it was the opposite. For months, even years, global watchdogs and foreign governments had been sounding the alarm, loud and clear, about what was happening in Cambodia.
I mean, just look at the paper trail. As far back as May of 2023, the UN Human Rights Office issued a really stark warning about widespread human trafficking for these scams. Amnesty International published its own reports detailing horrific abuse. The US and the UK ran a joint investigation that lasted a year and a half, and it resulted in sanctions, and official letters detailing the crisis were sent directly to the South Korean government, among others. The warnings were coming from everywhere.
So if everybody knew, why did it take so long to act? To understand the hesitation, you have to follow the money, and it's a staggering amount. Some estimates suggest this illicit industry makes up as much as half, that's 50%, of Cambodia's entire gross domestic product. It's become a dark, twisted pillar of the nation's economy.
But behind those massive, abstract numbers is a human cost that is, well, it's almost unimaginable. Now we have to look past the money and inside these compounds, at the actual people who are trapped there.
You see, this isn't just human trafficking as we typically think of it. It's a specific, cruel model that experts call human trafficking for forced criminality. It works like this. Victims from all over the world are targeted with sophisticated online job ads, promising great pay and a new life. But when they arrive, their passports are taken, they're imprisoned, and they are forced, under threat of violence, to run online scams against other innocent people. They are both the victims and the unwilling tools of the crime.
The UN's own words paint a truly grim picture. We're not talking about a few dozen people. We're talking about tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. They're held completely incommunicado, cut off from the world, and forced to endure what the UN calls inhumane treatment.
And let's be clear, inhumane treatment is a clinical euphemism for absolute horror. Reports from survivors and international observers are filled with details of routine electric torture for not meeting scam quotas, severe beatings, sexual violence, and in some cases, even death. That is the daily reality for those trapped inside.
The situation finally hit a tipping point for the South Korean government when a personal tragedy became a national headline: the death of a 20-year-old Korean student who was reportedly tortured inside one of these compounds. That one story galvanized what had been a slow-moving bureaucracy into a belated but now decisive response.
And when you look at the timeline, that gap is just stark. The official UN warning came in May 2023, but it was only after a citizen's death hit the news recently that the joint task force was sent and that high-level diplomatic meetings were suddenly on the calendar. You can see the shift from inaction to urgent action.
Okay, so what's actually being done now? The response is hitting on multiple fronts. First, high-level diplomacy. Officials met directly with Cambodia's Prime Minister Hun Manet, who has now pledged to cooperate. Second, they're putting law enforcement on the ground. A new Korean desk, staffed with South Korean police, is being set up in the hotspot city of Sihanoukville. Third, they're tightening border controls, with police now screening Cambodia-bound flights right at the gate. And finally, there are active efforts to bring the Koreans who are currently detained back home.
The most immediate focus is on the roughly 60 South Korean nationals who are known to be caught up in this. They've either been rescued from compounds or arrested in connection with them. The #1 goal is getting them home safely. So, action is finally being taken. Raids are happening, people are being rescued. But this brings us to the biggest, most difficult question of all. When you have a criminal industry this entrenched, this profitable, can these efforts truly stamp it out? You know, it seems like every entity is tackling a different piece of the puzzle. You have global bodies like the UN, whose main role is to report and sound the alarm. Then you have countries like the US and UK, who are going after the money with financial sanctions. And now you have this bilateral effort between South Korea and Cambodia, focused on rescue and on-the-ground policing. The real challenge is making all those different efforts work together.
And that coordination is absolutely critical, because the UN's warning here is dire. They've described this entire region as a testing ground for international crime, a place where criminal syndicates can operate with near impunity, perfecting ways to exploit technology and human desperation on a global scale. The call is for immediate, unified action from every country affected.
Which leaves us with this final, deeply unsettling question. The raids, the new police desks, the diplomatic meetings, they are all crucial, necessary steps. But when a criminal enterprise becomes so vast that it literally props up an entire national economy, it creates a fundamental problem. Who in that situation really has the power and the will to shut it down for good?